There's a moment in every man's life, a moment he doesn't speak about, a moment buried under years of "I'm fine," decades of white-knuckle self-control, and a lifetime of pretending he doesn't remember where the shaking began. It happens when someone gets too close, when someone looks at you a little too long, when someone says your name with a softness you don't know how to receive. And suddenly, you go rigid. Your voice shrinks. You apologize for existing. You turn into a machine instead of a man. You think it's a personality quirk. It's not. It's a scar, a survival blueprint, a childhood battlefield still running inside a grown man's body. And today, I'm going to expose 9 behaviors you think are normal, but they're not. They are the fingerprints of your past, the shadows you carry, the unconscious rules your nervous system wrote when you were too young to understand the cost. By number 4, you will finally understand why your whole life has felt like an endurance test, why you're exhausted even when you're standing still, why you can conquer chaos but collapse in peace. Let's begin. Number 9. Apologizing for breathing. Sorry, can I just... Sorry to bother you. Sorry, is this seat taken? You're not polite. You're conditioned. You learned to shrink before you learned to speak. You learned that smallness was safety, that silence was survival, that camouflage was the only way to avoid the wrath of people who were supposed to love you. Psychology calls it fawning, the 4th F. Not fight, not flight, not freeze, but servitude. The siren archetype seduces. The king commands, but the fawn, he survives by disappearing. Your brain still believes every room is a battlefield, every authority figure a ticking bomb, every request a potential punishment. So you pre-defend yourself. You apologize before you exist. Tell me, when did breathing become something you felt you had to earn? Number 8. Calm in chaos, broken in peace. Everyone praises your composure, your steadiness, your unshakable presence. They have no idea. You're not calm. You're conditioned. Chaos is your native language. You grew up decoding storms, predicting lightning strikes in people's moods, reading the atmosphere like your life depended on it, because it did. This is why you don't flinch during emergencies. This is why you're the one calling 911 while everyone else screams. This is why you go into perfect robot mode when life falls apart. But when someone raises their voice, when someone asks what you're feeling, when someone gets too close, you crumble. Your window of tolerance is warped. You can handle a 5-alarm fire, but intimacy burns you alive. Let me ask you something no one's ever dared to ask. What happens to a man who survives every war, but has no idea how to live without one? Number 7. Hoarding like the end of the world is tomorrow. Extra chargers, backup stashes of cash, cans you'll never eat, supplies you'll never touch. People joke about it. You don't. You live through scarcity of love, of attention, of affection, of safety. Some of you live through actual hunger. Some of you live through emotional starvation so severe your body treats abandonment like a natural disaster. So you hoard. Not things, control. It's not greed, it's fear. Your nervous system whispers, what if it happens again? What if the rug gets pulled? What if everything I have gets taken from you? And so you stockpile, you strategize, you prepare. But tell me, how do you ever feel safe when the threat isn't outside, but inside your own memory?
6. Help feels like debt. Kindness
feels like a trap. Someone offers you help, and your stomach tightens. Your brain starts calculating. You mentally tally favors like a survival accountant. You think it's manners. It's not. It's hypervigilance. Some of you grew up in families where help came at a cost, where gifts were weapons, kindness was leverage, and generosity was just the first step in manipulation. So, as an adult, every favor feels like a Trojan horse. Every kindness feels like a future ambush. You don't reject help because you're independent. You reject it because receiving requires trust. And nothing terrifies a wounded man more than trusting the wrong person again. Here's a paradox. You crave connection, but connection requires vulnerability. And vulnerability was the first thing life ever punished you for. 5. The oversharer and the vault. There are two versions of you, and both of them are masks. Version 1, the oversharer. You tell strangers your life story in 10 minutes flat. Not because you trust them, but because you want to speed run intimacy. You want to prove you're honest, open, real. Version 2, the vault. People have known you for years and still don't know where you were born, or what you want, or what hurts. Oversharing is an attachment wound, a desperate search for someone who won't leave. Being a vault is a trauma wound, a desperate attempt to ensure no one ever gets close enough to hurt you again. But tell me this, how does a man choose between bleeding out in someone's hands or dying alone behind armored walls? 4. You test people because you expect them to fail. This is where most people finally break. You push people away just to see who will stay. You disappear just to see who chases. You pick fights just to see who cares. It's not toxic. It's tragic. You're reenacting the oldest wound you carry, abandonment. Your brain whispers, hurt them first. Control the ending. Don't let them surprise you like the others did. The shadow archetype inside you, the part forged in betrayal, is always waiting for proof that you're unlovable. And when someone finally gets tired and leaves, you sigh in relief, as if you were right all along. But you weren't right. You were rehearsing a prophecy written by a younger version of you. Let me ask you something brutal. What if the love you've been waiting for already tried to stay, and you pushed it away before I had the chance? And here, we pause. Because what comes next, what sits at the top of this list, is the thing that devours your energy, drains your life force, and makes every year feel heavier than the last. It's the one behavior that keeps you trapped in survival mode, even when your life is no longer a war. And in part 2, we're going to walk straight into that shadow, the mirror you spent years avoiding. And I'll show you the truth you've never dared to say out loud. Ready? Part 2, the return to yourself, begins exactly where part 1 ended. Music. Slow, pulsing, echoing. We left off at the edge of your deepest wound, the place where exhaustion becomes identity, where survival becomes personality, where you confuse self-protection with self-erasure. Let's continue. 3. You feel guilty for resting. Rest is supposed to be human. To you, it feels criminal. You sit down and your chest tightens. You take a day off and your brain screams that you're falling behind. Not because you're driven, but because stillness is when the ghosts catch up. Productivity becomes your drug. Grinding becomes your religion. Exhaustion becomes your moral currency. Because when you were young, moving made you safe. Stillness made you a target. So now, as an adult, resting feels dangerous. Your survival brain bellows, "Keep moving or you will die." But here's the contradiction that breaks you. The life you want requires the peace you fear. 2. Eye contact feels like exposure. Someone looks at you a second too long, and something ancient inside you recoils. Because eye contact is not about seeing,
It's about being seen. And being seen, truly seen, was once the prelude to being hurt. So, you avert your gaze. Not to be rude, but because your soul still remembers the last time someone studied you like a weakness. This is gaze aversion, a trauma relic. But beneath it is something more mythic. The shadow fears the witness. Your broken parts fear the mirror in another person's eyes. Let me ask you this. If someone really saw you, the real you, would they stay? Or would they run like the others did? 1. You don't recognize yourself. This is the deepest cut, the final scar. You look into the mirror and feel a subtle, eerie disconnection, like you're piloting a body that isn't yours, like you slipped out of yourself years ago and never came back. This is dissociation, your emergency escape hatch, your psychic airbag, the moment when reality became so unbearable that your mind stepped outside itself just to survive. And here's the unbearable truth. You survived your childhood by leaving your body. You will heal your adulthood by returning to it. The archetype you've been living as. For years, maybe decades, you've been living as the martyr, carrying everyone else's weight, dying by inches, exhausted, invisible, shrinking. The shadow, suspicious, guarded, testing, waiting for betrayal. And sometimes the siren, oversharing to seduce attachment, hoping pain can be a bonding ritual. But who you were meant to become, the archetype waiting beneath the scars, is the king. Not a tyrant, not a bully, not a stone wall. A man who occupies space without apologizing. A man who speaks without shrinking. A man who receives love without calculating the debt. A man who rests without feeling like he's failing. And the bridge between the wounded man and the king is awareness. Seeing the scar. Naming the pattern. Catching the reflex in real time. Because the moment a survival tactic becomes conscious, it stops being destiny